Sure where we are. And we came in nice that time. And you did good. We were pleasantly surprised by all the sights and sounds at Ditto Landing when we arrived. Ethan was particularly enamored with this little seaplane. It was pretty cool. But even more than that, we were excited about all of the green space to explore in the area. Wondering how long it would be for you to start picking up sticks.
Oh, he's already picked up one. Like we were 3 steps on the grass.
I did.
So Ethan was already finding new sticks to play with, and we found a really cool playground that was between the marina and the campground, which was also a really good find for him. He entertained himself quite a while there. In addition to the green spaces, we were also surrounded by lots of other water. There was lots of runoff in the park that had different ducks and crawfish in them, so that was really fun to see. There was also a lake back behind the park that was really pretty and apparently very good for fishing. The ship store was also pretty centrally located in the marina and was right between the two transient docking areas. So that was really good for any little trips that we needed to make to get snacks or check in about our slip. It was also really convenient because the restrooms and shower were located right there. I don't normally do bathroom tours, but the unisex shower here at Ditto Landing is air conditioned, and I feel like I have died and gone to heaven. As usual, there was plenty of wildlife to see. We saw tons of blue herons way out fishing the people. Ethan came across a couple of wrestling circus ducks, so that was fun to explain. But lots to see and watch for sure. So we enjoyed our time hanging out at the park and walking around, catching up on a little bit of email type stuff and work, and even had some time and opportunity to catch up with friends that we hadn't talked to in a while. So it was good to be in one spot with decent Wi-Fi. We had every intention of leaving the next morning, but as the evening wore on, it looked like we were in for some bad weather. So we buckled up for that and just waited to see what the evening would hold. And what the evening held was more of what we had seen lately, which was tornado warnings and things. So we chilled on the boat for the night and hoped that things would be looking good and we could make a decent weather window to travel to Decatur the next day. But it was definitely a long evening. Luckily for us, the weather wasn't too bad, but it did keep us up all night, and we had a pretty short weather window to get to our next stop the following day. So since we couldn't get up and going as early as I wanted after a night like that, we decided to stay in Ditto for another day and get some other boat chores done. Here I am about halfway at the mast, taking care of our steaming light, and we were able to get the bulb out this time and get a new one in. So that was really good. I'm going to have to go up again later and put a different bulb in, but at least we got that done. And I took my phone up with me this time so you can see how far up I am just at the spreaders. After we finished that project, I went all the way to the top of the mast to try to change the light out in our anchoring light. Unfortunately, I was not able to get to that, mostly because I was doing it blind. Since the light is right on top of the mast, I couldn't see well enough to be able to get the bulb piece out. But I did take a quick picture from up there too, just before coming down. And let me tell you, it is a long ways up. Anytime anyone moves on the boat, you feel it pretty significantly. So when Ray offered to grill us up a traditional Memorial Day meal, I was all about it. We had grilled chicken, grilled sausage, barbecued sausage, a salad, some corn. It was really nice, actually, to be put for Memorial Day and have a special little celebration. We had a fairly short weather window for the next day to get to Decatur. So we ate up our food. Very nice. Relaxed for a bit and then got to bed early so that we could be up at 5:45 and ready to leave the next morning around 6:30. It was going to be a pretty misty, overcast morning, but we were ready for it. The more we watched the weather reports, the more it looked like the nasty weather was going to stay away, and so we weren't going to have to worry so much about having a decent weather window and should be able to make it to Decatur with no problem whatsoever. We made it under our first bridge, always a good way to start the day, and it was shortly after we went under this bridge that we started noticing another new thing in the area. We were finally seeing egrets. We had seen blue herons all along the Tennessee River, but now suddenly they were beginning to outnumber the blue herons about 5 to 1. And, as had become the norm in North Alabama, though it was pretty misty and foggy, the scenery was still absolutely stunning. The area that we were coming through was pretty sparsely populated, so the riverside was just gorgeous. And we later found out that there's a pretty large wildlife refuge or bird reserve in the area, so that could account for all the new egrets we were seeing as well. The fog just continued to be thick and misty, so we were really bundled up, and everything on the boat looked like it was covered with rain. But the lake was smooth as glass, and we pretty much had it to ourselves. We did at one point see something way up ahead of us on the river, and it was just too foggy. There were no lights on it. But after my last experience of thinking I saw a lighthouse in the middle of the river, I figured that this had to be a tug, and pretty soon we could tell. I tried to radio this barge to make sure that it was okay for us to pass port to port, but there was plenty of space on the river, no one else around. And I guess he was just enjoying having the place to himself too, because we never heard anything from him. He did wave as we went by, so at least we didn't get a nasty gram from him. We eventually saw the bridges and industry coming into Decatur, and I've got to tell you, I was pretty nervous about that railroad bridge. We showed that we had 2 bridges to go under, but they both showed as fixed bridges, and that one very obviously didn't look tall enough for our mast. What it turned out to be was that the fixed bridge is actually 2 bridges there, traffic going both directions. The railroad bridge was something that we would have to have raised, but not until the next day, because Decatur River Walk Marina was just to the starboard side between those 2 bridges. So after we figured that out, I was pretty relieved and happy to be out of the fog finally and just kind of taking in the sights of Decatur. Decatur had the most industry that we had seen on the river since we had left the Chattanooga area. And it was really interesting kind of being witness to all of that again. There's their big sign, proud home of Meow Mix. And as we were coming by one of these, Ethan noted how much it smelled like pasta. I don't know what kind of mill or factory it was, but it must have had some kind of grains, because he was 100% right. It smelled like they were cooking spaghetti. There on the railroad bridge, you can see the last part of the train as it leaves. And I have no idea what this was. It looked like salt, but there was a pretty bad odor that came along with it. It kind of smelled like used kitty litter, which was even funnier considering we had just passed the home of Meow Mix. Now, if I'm being perfectly honest, everything that I remember kind of after this point becomes a blur, because things were about to go unexpectedly wrong for us. I did my usual watching us go under the bridge, of course, because I'm always convinced that we're going to touch the top or the bottom of the bridge with the top of our mast. And then I began immediately looking to the right past the bridges, because that's where we were told Decatur River Walk Marina was. Now, we knew that there used to be a restaurant on site and that the restaurant was closed for renovations of some type, but everything that I had looked up or tried to get information online showed that there were transient slips still out in front of the restaurant. So that is the direction that we headed, and that's when things got bad. So as usual, when things were going awry, we weren't running the camera, but this is probably the best way for me to show you. You can see the green track here where we came under the bridge and headed to the right toward the marina. That's Decatur River Walk Marina. And you can see this area. This is where the old restaurant was, and there are supposedly docks there. And the docks are there. They just no longer connect to anything. So over on the side, you can see that's the fuel dock. And that's where we headed eventually until we could kind of scope out the marina and get a better feel for what it looked like. And it looks exactly like what you're looking at, with the exception of that piece in the middle. That's not actually like a dock or anything. That's all empty now. So they've got those 4 big boat slips, and it's essentially in a retention pond size marina. So the problem is that when we came under the bridge, we expected the current to be pushing downriver, but for whatever reason, when we came under, the current was pushing us right toward the docks at about 7 knots, which is pretty stiff. So not only did we get pushed sideways coming into the dock, but we were able to get into the slip relatively safely, but then we realized it wasn't connected to anything, and trying to leave and back out against 7 knots is just not great for a sailboat. We ended up getting pushed back into the docks again and scraped the whole port side of the boat pretty badly getting out of there. Once we did finally get off the docks, Ray was able to drive the boat over to the fuel marina where we could tie up for a minute and get a better look at things. But it was really rough and just not really an ideal marina for sailboats. There's not a lot of room to maneuver, not much room to turn around inside the marina. The current was definitely way stiffer than we expected just outside the marina. It wasn't a pretty docking like the ones that we had been getting used to, but at least we were tied up for the night. To make matters worse, however, the marina appears to be somewhat defunct. I tried to call one phone number and got no answer, tried to call another number and it had been disconnected, and there was no one on the premises. We were told that you would normally pay for transient slips at the restaurant, but the restaurant is closed and apparently has been for some time. So, I mean, I guess on the bright side, at least we got a free night there. We're probably going to end up having to use it on paint or fixing our scupper on the side of the boat. Once again, the boat held up under difficult circumstances, and so did we. We managed to get in and get a decent night's sleep for the night, but I was looking forward to the next destination for sure. So even though we didn't have a great weather window to look forward to, and we did have that bridge that we would have to cross under the next day, we were ready for bed and ready to get up early and try again tomorrow. After all, we had already learned that when you have a good day, it's usually followed by a bad one, but then that's followed by a better one. Thanks for watching.